Okay, for the half of you who don't know who I am, I'm Robert McLay. I have been the chief cook and bottle washer for Lmod for too long. I would like to thank one of my colleagues at TACC for coming up with the Lmod logo. I stole some of the ideas from Kenneth's first version of EasyBuild. The block over there is supposed to remind you that things come in and out easily with Lmod. So I'm going to talk about what recent changes have been going on. Some of them are worth repeating. I'm going to talk about where Lmod is going, and this talk is available at the GitHub repo for Lmod. So the current release is 8.7.59. 8.8 is finally coming out next week when I get home. I'm going to skip most of these things. It reads TCL and module files. It's got a cache. It's got properties. It's got tracking, ML. How many people use ML? It's because I can't type the word module very effectively. I always transpose a couple of the letters. I know that there's a good deal of, this is an old comment, but Google Analytics, when you could do this for free, told me there were about 2,000 new users reading the documentation. So people are reading my lousily written documentation. Okay, so here are some of the recent features, and I'll talk about some of them in detail. I've updated source to module file. That has existed for a while, and the notion of having a source_sh function is something I've stolen from Xavier. It was first in Tmod. Some new things that have come from different requests, downstream conflicts and dynamic defaults. I'll talk about that. I got a request to re-implement the hide and forbid functions that were also first in Tmod. One thing I have done, which was forced on me, was module usage tracking. I've found a way to speed that up greatly. How many people do track module usage at their site? Well, half of you are wrong. So another interesting thing that Matthew, one of my colleagues at TACC, who's been did most of the work on, is irreversible, and I'll explain what that is, and a new hook called decorate module. So I have no idea why anybody would want to write a shell script to set up the source when module files certainly exist, but not everybody's got the message. So source to sh is this notion that allows sites to put a shell script inside of a module file. It dynamically converts the converts the shell script into a module file, which is great if the shell script is doing things like want to know what $home or $user is. That's dynamic. It stores the module, it builds the module command and stores it in what I call the module table, which is how Lmod knows what's loaded and what's there. Shell to module file is better because you only do that translation once, but it's obviously useless if there are dynamic variables in there. One of the updated changes, it always knew about environment variables, but now it tracks shell functions and aliases. The older version of this, 8.6, Lmod 8.6, would get lost with path-like variables. I believe I fixed that, I hope. So far, I've seen no bugs on it, so I'm going to say it's fixed until proven otherwise. This is a request that came from the OpenHPC group. They wanted the ability to have the dynamic module RC file so they could control what the defaults are. So their notion is that they're providing some software which is interacting with a system that's already there. So they're not in complete control. So they want to be able to change what the defaults are. And Also, they wanted the ability to have downstream conflicts. So the way conflicts have worked is that you try and load a module, it says, hey, you can't load this module because some other module is there. This function allows you to say, okay, I'm going to set a downstream conflict. And so it says, well, VASP 8.6 is a conflict. So if you try and load it, somewhere down the line, it will say, hey, you can't load it. This is allowing people to do depends on fails. So this is another thing I've stolen from Tmod. A SPAC developer requested support for this in Lmod. So hide is a more powerful way to hide modules. You can hide before or after certain dates. And this is something I don't like, but I can see why people want this. You can hide modules from being listed. It's my environment. You're putting stuff in it and you're not telling me it's there? Ugh! Anyway, this can be overrun by setting, ML minus cap A will tell you everything that's loaded. Or there's an environment variable that Alexander was kind enough to tell me I needed, which was you can set environment variable Lmod show hidden and specify all or spider or list. And so it will print all the ones that you have that are hidden, and you don't have to remember the minus cap A. And so anyway, I'm very happy to add that. So you can't lie to me. But I can see why, for beginning users, they don't need to know that there are 15 dependent modules for this package, another 15 for that package, and so forth. They just need to know that package A is loaded and all the dependencies are hidden from them. Forbid is a different one. So forbid says it's there, but you can't load it. And this is, I guess, is a way to communicate to users that, hey, something is gone that used to be there. And there's also a forbid. You can say something's going to be almost forbidden. Namely, you load it, it'll tell you, oh, this is going to be forbidden in 2 weeks. And you can also mark things to be forbidden or hidden. I didn't mention that. So you might have something that staff is working on and it's hidden, but if you're a member of the staff group, you can load it. And you can also hide things from everybody but certain users or certain groups. Yeah. Probably. I mean, it just asks what the system date is. It doesn't go out to the world and NTP it and know what the actual date is. So you can lie, but that means running your system in the past, which can get really weird with make.
Is there an advantage using the forbid function instead of just manually doing the if checking yourself in the model file?
Sorry, say again.
Is there an advantage in using this forbid function instead of just using if user is such and such, then you cannot load it or something?
Well, forbid prevents it from being loaded. If you're inside the module, you're gonna have to do an abort. Right. So this says, because this is in your Lmod, module RC file, it's where so it's checking that before it tries to load it. So it's different in that sense. So I had a VM that was running CentOS 0.4, I think, that I'd been collecting data on, and finally the staff at TACC said, we can't do anything with it and haven't been able to do anything with it for 5 years, so you have to move. So, so I started looking into moving the database. One of the problems with the Lmod database is it wasn't easy to delete old data. And I noticed when I went on the system, I noticed I had module usage data from 2014, which I no longer care about. So I reworked the database to have just one table rather than multiple tables. It stores more data, but it's easier to delete. And then I also noticed that if a user loads a package more than once, we store it, but I don't need that information, because all I really want to know is that Robert McLay loaded VAS today. I don't care whether I loaded it 1 time or 15 times. I only need to know that once, because all I'm going to tell you is, here's the module usage for a particular module, you know, for these dates. There's who's loaded this module. I don't care how many times it's loaded. So essentially what I do is I run it through a hash table and only record a user per day per module. And this was a 10-to-1 reduction, 10 times reduction in the amount of data on average. And the redesigned tables allow me to only keep 12 months worth of data, which greatly reduced the search time. I mean, it's arbitrary how long you keep it, but 12 months for us is sufficient. Certainly not 10 or 15 years. So, irreversible. So, I hope this makes sense to everybody who's been using modules for a while, but it's kind of a strange concept. When you load a module files say, I'm going to set these variables, I'm going to prepend a path, I might define some function, you know, some shell function or alias or something. And when you load it, that's what you get. It modifies your environment. When you unload it, all those things are reversed. So the things that got set get unset, the path entries get removed from the path-like variables, etc. And that's great, because that's pretty much what you want, or has been what we've wanted. Occasionally, well, except for push ENV. Push ENV is a little different because you say, you set a variable, so you use push ENV to change the value. When you pop ENV, essentially, it resets that value back to its old thing, whereas set says, okay, here's what it's set, and when it gets removed, it's gone. It's empty. So you don't get what the previous value was. So we've added this thing called irreversible. It's rarely needed, but it might be something that you can use in these cases where you say, what the hell am I going to do? You're changing modes. Like we would support, we had a Cray on site, and I apologize for all of you who've had Crays. God. Anyway, so we jailbroke the thing, and we could run our system the way we wanted to, but we allowed users to switch whether they wanted to be in a Cray world or not. And this would be a convenient way to unload something which loads a new set of modules or sets an environment variable, because there was virtually no way to unload a module and have it set ENV, or I guess this is no. So this will allow you to set variables. So here's this new syntax. So this is in Lua, and so normally you would just say load open paren and a string, which is the module you want to load. This now says, okay, the first statement says load, depend load, only when the module is in mode, when you're loading. So it wouldn't do anything on unload. Depend unload wouldn't do anything on load, would only load it when you're unloading this module. Or for example, set ENV only sets that variable to BBB, triple B, when you're unloading. So essentially allows you to do something on unload. Now, I'm thinking of cases where you might need this, and there may not be many, but I've seen it requested. So somebody wanted something to load when they unloaded something else. This is now available. One of the last things I want to talk about before I get to the thing I just discovered at this meeting, there are sites that are using SPAC or other things where they don't want to doctor the module files. And so I've added a thing, or actually got a pull request that did all the work, so I didn't have to do anything except accept it. I did change the name because they wanted to add to module, and I decided I like decorate because I'm a design pattern kind of guy. So decorate module it is. They can use this hook to add Lua functions to a module file. This hook is called on loading any module file. So you have to figure out, okay, if this module file is a SPAC module, I want to add a property to it. So you have to check the path or the name or something and say, add text to it. The text must be in Lua. Even if the module file itself was written in TCL, by the time this function is called, the module file itself has already been converted to Lua. So again, you know, if you have the text, you can always copy it someplace and modify it. So this is, you know, but it was kind of cool thing to add, and I like the name, so we got it. Before I get to this one, I want to talk about something that's come up at this meeting, and I don't know whether I'm going to implement it, but I want to throw it out there as an idea. So so at TACC, we have SSDs, local SSDs per node. And so we put all our module files there. So we've got fast access to the module files, but not everybody does that. And one of the things that I realized is that walking the file system is expensive. And when a module loads, you've got two choices. You can either use the spider cache, and that way it reads in one file, it knows where all the module files are, and so it doesn't have to walk the tree. But if I read the spider cache, I'm not walking the file system. So if you add a module file without updating the spider cache, Lmod won't find it unless you tell it to ignore cache. So, but that thing doesn't contain the full text of the module file. So I'm wondering if, and this is a question I want some answers from you people, is if the spider cache read in the module file and stored it there, how big is this file going to be? You know, in other words, I need to know if I did that, you know, are we talking gigabytes or megabytes, right? I think gigabytes, I mean, megabytes would be fine. Gigabytes would be a problem. Yeah.
This is just a few megabytes.
Okay,
And,
well, but that's at your site. What at his site?
but it is with thousands of module files. So it's the same, I think, on every site. And it's much more efficient to do it this way, right? Especially you will gain the dynamic evaluation part directly in the modules. Currently, if you do not save the module content and you just analyze that based on the one that runs the spider cache, that builds the spider cache, you lose some dynamicity of your environment. If you save everything inside one file, what we do with other modules, one cache file per module path, it's really efficient to do it that way.
Well, anyway, so that's one of the questions. I'd like people here to send me how many module files they have at, you know, various sites, so I have an idea. And maybe Kenneth, you can send me a set, so I can try. I can, tar one up and send me it, and I can play with it and see how big it is. Because you're right. I mean, what I do know is that reading one file in Lmod is fast. and walking the file system is slow. The disadvantage to this, of course, is if the cache file is out of date, it's out of date. And so it would be responsible for the site to say, hey, my cache file is up to date, I trust it. I mean, there will be always the minus, ignore cache option so it can do what it used to do. So you can always compare that. But I think that's probably a good addition, and you might not have to do collapsing module files, multiple module files into one, because essentially all you're going to do is read one file anyway. But it's going to be bigger. It's going to be slower than reading the cache file that's a tenth the size, but it may not matter. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so future of Lmod. Anyway, so hit me at breaks and dinner and stuff. We can talk about this, but I think this is a good idea, and it might simplify you guys trying to work around the module file, working around what modules do. So I'm now working half-time. Matthew Kaywood from TACC is helping me with Lmod. And this spring, we're looking to join the software, the High Performance Software Foundation, and try and make Lmod more public. But I am going to be looking for people who are going to help work on Lmod. I think that Lmod's success has been partly due to we've been good about answering the mail in GitHub, and we don't have 1,000 pull requests pending. I don't think we have. Well, I don't think we have any. I have a couple of pull requests I've said, no, I'm not doing that. And a couple of issues I'm saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
I quickly cut some numbers for you. We have 12,000 modules,
Okay.
Lua files. And if I put that together in an uncompressed tarball, it's 31 megabytes.
Okay, great. So that's tiny.
Yes.
How many? 12,000?
Yes.
That's, yeah, no, we probably have less than 1,000.
I got a question, not just for you, but maybe for the room, because we have some 1,000 modules installed and we are still getting issues about load time, and we are using the Spider cache.
Well, yeah.
So my question is there something else that can be done, or?
But, okay, so what the Spider cache, if you say you're going to use cache loads, all that says is Lmod is not walking the tree.
Yeah.
It just says, okay, here's A 1.0, it knows where to find it, it reads that in, and then it loads, it does that for, let's say you have A to Z. So you've got 26 modules that you're loading. So it's doing a separate read throughout the file system.
Yeah, for each module file that actually gets loaded, yeah.
So without that, it has to go find the module file, so it's walking the tree, and then loads each one. So if I put everything in the cache file, it's going to read a now bigger cache file, so it goes from, say, 1 megabyte to 14, right? Because you have 13, you said? 31. So it goes from 1 megabyte to 32 megabytes, because it has to add all that extra information. That's still probably going to be fast. I don't know. Reading one file is typically fast. It's just getting there. And if everybody is reading that file because it's a shared file on that node, or it will be cached, right? I mean, especially in a shared.
But actually, we could actually have that in a RAM disk. And
Well,
it could be very fast.
Right, but I don't think you need to. I think it'll be automatic.
Yeah, but I mean, this cache with all the contents of the modules.
Yeah, well, you could always write it to, shmem, dev shmem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And then it would be as fast as it could possibly be. But I I'm not sure. The first time one person on the system reads it, it'll be slow, but every time after that, it'll be fast. And I don't know that you care, but you know, if you want to optimize, that would be great. But that would be independent of Lmod. I mean, in other words, it would just be where you wrote it, and you would have some configure step say, hey, it's here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think one of the hidden reasons why Lmod is successful, and I think it's also true of Tmod as well, is there are thousands of tests. So I can honestly say I don't think I've ever sent the same bug out twice, or rarely sent the same bug out twice. Doesn't mean there aren't bugs in it, because I get bug reports all the time, but we don't send the same one out. So this makes it harder to break current behavior. So I think it's a good opportunity for somebody who wants to help with Lmod to feel safe that they're not going to break something. Why join the team? Well, I've traveled the world and I'm here. And this picture is pretty old, but this shows where somebody has read the documentation. So I can safely say that Lmod is read pretty much all over the world. The document, you know, the GitHub where you guys find it all is there. The documentation is ReadHub, read the docs. And also I have a monthly Zoom meeting. If anybody wants to come and kibitz or tell me what things I've done wrong, you're welcome to come and yell at me. And I'll take questions.
One about the irreversible thing.
Yes?
Does it also work when you do a purge or a purge?
Oh, so purge says you get rid of everything. So unload says I take that module and do the statements, but purge says ignores that the mode A thing and says, hey, it's gone.
With a forbid, is it possible to give a reason why it's forbidden to load a module? So for example,
yes, you can put a message that says, this is forbidden because we don't like it anymore. I mean, or it's got a problem or whatever. There's a message that's hidden in the text. I mean, hidden, sorry, you can say message equals some string and it will tell you, okay, you can't load this one because it's being replaced or whatever. It's a little different than the nag. I mean, this is a little bit, it's sort of like the nag message that's been there a long time, which is where you can say, when you put a nag message in, it can say this is going away on such and such a date. So there's essentially two ways to kind of do. Any more questions?
Well, I have one. While I'm walking over, I can ask. So if this idea of the spider plus, right?
Yeah.
And if you were going to do that, you could do other things too, right? You could say, well, I know I'm adding this bin directory. What's inside?
Right.
Or I know I have this library path. What libraries are in there?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that Ward, how many people know Ward? There's a GitHub issue saying, hey, the Spider cache knows the bin directory. Why can't it tell you, when you type in a command that VASP is found over here? Haven't loaded the VASP module and you type in VASP, it knows where it can be found because the module system interacts with that, find hidden command, find unknown commands.
Yeah, my question is a follow-up to the forbidden question.
Yeah.
Because I think if I understand it well, we've been doing it for many years using a load hook where we just say, if you try to load fast, we say, you don't have a license, you're not in the right license group, contact us if you have a license, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Which is even like in multiple languages. Right. So the question is, can we then do this more elegantly with forbidden, or is it like two things to do the same thing?
Well, typically you say, you're not in the right group. support that, and that doesn't. Forbidden's not that. Well,
Okay.
actually, I guess you can say, you're forbidden with that hook. So it is another way to do it. It's static code rather than having to implement a hook. It's also a way to tell users that something's going away to everybody, which you wouldn't do with you don't have access to VASP or whatever.
But we've actually done this with hooks where we did the deprecation warning for or we would say for Python module, the default is going to change from 3.10 to 3.11 or something like that.
Yeah, this is similar. It's just I had to implement the list hide, so it was just part of the whole thing, and it was implemented in Tmod, so I just implemented exactly what was there. But yes, it's somewhat similar to. It does have the ability to do the group thing.
Okay, thanks.
We should probably move on.
Okay.
Javier is next, so